Thank you, VDOE Multimedia. We can see that we're live streaming and that the meeting is being recorded.
Good morning.
So can you give 2 minutes and just wait until 10 a.m. and then we'll be able to get started. Just for the recording, I'm sorry that the VDOE conference room camera is not functioning this morning, so we will just be a logo. And the presenters are able to share, so. And Dr. Williams, are you available? Is your audio working? Okay, he may join us here in the room.
Recording in progress.
Good morning, Dr. Berry.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I guess I know I need to put it on mute now. Thank you.
Okay,
ID?
so I think we're going to be fine with the 2 VCU.
Yeah, this is Sultanat Liebert from VCU.
Okay.
So I'm a little
Good morning.
confused because I see texts from me, but I'm not texting. So it's a little strange.
I think that's Dr. Missler. I think
Okay.
we will be ready to go in 1 minute.
And-
Dr. Missler, are you back on my voice?
I'm here as well.
Excellent, excellent. You two have separated your identities. That's great. Okay.
And I cannot start my video for some reason. It says that the host
That's
is able.
correct. That's correct, but I'm going to make you a co-host so you can run your presentation.
Got it. But my video will be off. Is that correct?
Correct.
Got it. Got it.
Um,
Okay. All right, it is 10 a.m. and I'm Tammy Dean. I'm the chairperson of the Adult Education Literacy Advisory Committee meeting. And I would like to welcome everyone here today. At this time, I'd like to call to order the meeting. And first, I would like to take attendance, and then I'm going to review the agenda. And then Dr. Williams will be introducing our guest speakers for today. So start with roll. Dr. Rodney Berry.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Rebecca Hughes. Ms. Roxana Mija.
Yes, here, thank you.
And if I say your name wrong, please correct me. Mr. Duncan Quick. Mr. Allen.
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Alan Melton.
Greetings from Poquoson.
Thank you. Mr. Tyler Freeland. Dr. Maria Privatera.
I'm here.
Thank you. Mr. Paul Willard. Ms. Nicole Bennett.
Here.
Thank you. And then Dr. Anthony Williams, you're here. In accordance to our adopted bylaws, the committee will not take any votes or conduct any official business today because we are virtual. But we will host presentations and provide updates on the adult education program today. Dr. Williams, would you like to go ahead and introduce our first speaker today?
Good morning, everyone. I would like to introduce Dr. Liebert.
Prior to joining the Wilder School, Dr. Lieber taught at American University in Washington, D.C., and worked for the World Bank, United Nations, and the International Organization for Migration in Kazakhstan, Austria, and the U.S. She has also served as a consultant on governance, migration, and human trafficking issues, working with such institutions as the Projection Project of Johns Hopkins University and the International Research and Exchanges Board. Dr. Lieber has been interviewed by media outlets such as Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and BBC World Service. In addition, Dr. Lieber is the chair-elect of American Society of Public Administration's section on personnel administration and labor relations, and the recipient of the 2020 Julia Juanita Henderson International Award presented by ASPA's section on women in public administration. Our second speaker that will be joining Dr. Lieber, Dr. Riesler. Dr. Riesler started as an assistant director of the Office of Public Policy Outreach in December 2017. Previously, he served as assistant director of programs for the Commonwealth Educational Policy Institute. He began coordinating communications and special projects for CEPI in the fall of 2012 while working on his PhD, and became assistant director in 2015. Dr. Riesler received his PhD from Wilder School's Public Policy and Administration program in August 2017. His research focuses on local immigration policy and its intersection with education. He holds a master's degree in international relations from Johns Hopkins University School of Advancement of International Studies, a graduate certificate in conflict transformation from Eastern Mennonite University Center for Justice and Peace Building, and a bachelor's degree in history from Goshen College. Prior to joining the Wilder School, Dr. Riesler coordinated fundraising for Mennonite Central Committee, East Coast, directed communications for the Faith and Politics Institute, and served 2.5 years in 3 positions through Mennonite Voluntary Service. Thank you to you two for your time this morning, and I will turn it over to our presenters.
Thank you so much for this kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Sultanat Liebert. My colleague and collaborator on this project is Dr. Grant Riesler. We are really delighted to have the opportunity today to present the results of the needs assessment. A bit of a background about this project. It was commissioned by the Office of New Americans, or ONA, at the Virginia Department of Social Services. The mandate for the report was to look at all immigrants in Virginia, and immigrants are foreign-born persons who moved to the US and intend to remain long-term. So, for example, foreign students who are studying at our colleges in Virginia would not be considered immigrants because the visa type that they have is temporary, and the assumption is that after they graduate, they would go back home. So today we'll be sharing some of the overall findings from the report, but where possible, we'll also draw on some examples from the insights shared by the entrepreneurs and entrepreneur-serving agencies. But also to clarify, the scope of the report was broad. We didn't focus just on entrepreneurs, but we did have some of the participants who are entrepreneurs, and some participants were agencies or Chamber of Commerce type officials who do work with entrepreneurs. First of all, to make sure that we're all on the same page, we'd like to define what we mean by immigrant integration. There is no single agreed upon definition, but the vast literature on immigrant integration has several definitions. Immigrant integration has been defined as the process of economic mobility and social inclusion for immigrants and for their children. It has also been described as the process by which members of immigrant groups and host societies come to resemble one another. This resemblance is not necessarily physical or not just physical, it's also the food that we eat and the music that we listen to. This is very different from assimilation, where immigrants lose their original culture and language over time. If we could have the next slide, please, Dr. Riesler.
Sorry, I just lost control of it for a second here.
Oh, interesting. All right, let's hope that the screen unfreezes, but I will move on. We were asked by the Office of New Americans to answer the following questions. What are the unmet barriers to integration that Virginia's immigrants experience? What are the government services that are available currently, but are not used by immigrant communities, and why are those services not used? And in addition, we were also asked to develop policy recommendations to answer the questions, how can ONA, the Office of New Americans, best address the unidentified barriers, and what changes will improve access to these services? Dr. Risler, would you like me to share the slides maybe?
If you can pull them up, thank you.
Yeah, let's see if we can do that. Just 1 second, we're having a technical difficulty here. Can you see my slides now?
Yes,
Wonderful.
thank you.
So this was the scope of the project that I just mentioned. And the way we conducted our project was both quantitative and qualitative. I will describe briefly the qualitative part of the data collection. We interviewed 48 organizations in Virginia that provide services to immigrants. We aimed at geographic diversity, but also the diversity of the types of services that were provided. We also conducted focus group discussions and interviews with 46 immigrants from various parts of the world. And the gray table will show you which parts of the world were represented in our sample. This next slide gives you the breakdown on the interviews by the regions in Virginia. As you see, many of our participants were from Central, West Central, and Northern Virginia. And at this point, I will hand over the presentation to my colleague, Dr. Risler.
Thank you, Salta. And thanks to everyone for attending today. It's worth stepping back and revisiting why this type of report is important. In the US, immigration has been a growing phenomenon in the last 50 years, particularly after the passage of the 1965 Immigration and Naturalization Act, which eliminated racial exclusions and limits. Over the last 30 years, Virginia's immigrant population grew significantly, from about 312,000 in 1990 to over 1 million in 2020. Traditional destination states like New York, California, and Texas are still major immigrant destinations, but Virginia is becoming a popular destination state too, and now ranks 15th in the country in terms of the percentage who are foreign born. So these growing immigrant communities, on the next slide, there's some data that shows the significant impact that they have in the Commonwealth. An estimated $33 billion in spending power and $13.4 billion paid in all types of taxes annually. Immigrants make up key portions of our healthcare and STEM workforces. The other thing to remember in thinking about Virginia's immigrant communities is that they are plural and diverse. Some of that is language and origin, but some of that is also where they are in their integration journey, what status they have and what skill sets they brought with them or have learned along the way. This data, broken down by naturalized versus non-citizen immigrants, shows the impact of this diversity. Naturalized immigrants are often more formally educated and more well-off economically on average than even US-born citizens, but non-citizen immigrants as a group lag those US-born averages. On the next slide here, we see that Virginia's immigrant population is diverse around origin, as mentioned before. This table shows the top 10 countries of origin where Virginia's immigrants were born. About 60% speak Spanish, but the other top languages after Spanish are Chinese, Vietnamese, Arabic, and Korean. One of the topics we understand you all have particular interest in, as Dr. Liebert mentioned is that of immigrant entrepreneurship. So a few notes on this topic are relevant as well. This is a key interest within the academic literature as well, because immigrants and entrepreneurs often share some similar characteristics. For example, willingness to take risks or the ability to adjust to new situations. Barriers in a new home can also push immigrants into entrepreneurship. An early lack of language fluency is one example. Skill mismatches and discrimination have been identified in the academic literature as such factors. Entrepreneurs are an important subset of Virginia's immigrant communities as well. More than 80,000 immigrants are entrepreneurs with a collective revenue of $2.5 billion. That means that immigrants are about 23% of all entrepreneurs in Virginia, while representing only about 13% of the population, and represent 34% of smaller Main Street business owners. With the next slide, I want to switch back to talking about Virginia's immigrants as a whole. And we wanted to share a few insights from the data profile of Virginia's immigrants that we developed using mapping capacity for the report. In longer presentations, we take a tour of some of the interactive story maps we developed as part of our report. In this presentation, we'll just share highlights from a few static maps, but feel free to follow the QR code to the left if you want to listen and explore at the same time. So this map at the right shows, uses 2019 5-year Census Bureau estimates to show the portion of each locality, county or city, who are foreign born. The darker green is a higher concentration, topping out in Virginia at about 36%, while lighter shading indicates below 2.4% of the total population. A couple key takeaways here. Clearly, the concentrations are higher in Northern Virginia, I think something that we're all aware of, but every locality has some immigrants. That said, for about half of Virginia's localities, the immigrant population is below 3.5%. And so efforts to integrate immigrants there may look very different than in areas with higher percentages. This next map shifts the analysis to the census tract level, and drilling down to that level highlights the existence of high concentrations in specific neighborhoods or areas outside of Northern Virginia. Harrisonburg and Accomack are two that stand out here. The interactive versions of these maps allow you to click on each of those tracts or locality and see the numerical estimate, which we've heard from some folks since sharing the report that it's helpful for research, for program planning, and even for grant writing. I want to turn now from numbers of immigrants in total back to that theme of diversity within the immigrant communities and focus on language. This table shows you the breakdowns by language for total number of speakers and number of limited English proficient speakers, as well sorted by the portion of each language group who identify as LEP. You can see that Spanish is the dominant language numerically, but that several languages have higher proportions of speakers who are limited English proficient. This next map overlays two types of information. And again, there's a QR code to get you to the interactive version. First, there is a gray shading showing the portion of the total adult population who are LEP. As you might expect, Nova and the Urban Crescent have tracts with high concentration, but others exist outside of that. Again, this may be helpful for planning purposes for English language learner adult education. Second, you'll notice a dot density mapping of the number of persons over the age of 5 who speak a language other than English at home. Again, this data is coming from the Census Bureau. Each dot at this level of magnification or zoom represents 56 people. The colors represent 4 broad language groupings, which is as much as the Census Bureau breaks it down at the tract or locality level. Red are Spanish speakers, while blue is any other Indo-European language, green is any Asian Pacific language, and yellow is everything outside of those 3 boxes. Part of the reason we overlaid these 2 data sets in the same map was to highlight the asset base present in many places of people who speak languages other than English, as they represent a resource for connecting to and integrating immigrants who may still be learning English or are limited English proficient. The next map is our attempt to fill a gap in the census data. The census only provides information in those large language groupings that I just showed you. And so in the report, we also utilize data from the Virginia Department of Education on the number of students who speak a language other than English at home. The abbreviation for that is OTE. The map shown here is shaded based on the percentage of students in a given locality who are OTE speaking at home, while the numbers represent the number of different languages that have at least one student speaking it at home. Again, in the interactive version, you can select the specific locality and see more detail. The table at the bottom then shows the top school divisions based on the percent that speak a language other than English at home. Some of them are in Northern Virginia, and some of those that have the most different languages spoken are in Northern Virginia. For example, Fairfax County has about 139 different languages. But there are also those systems that are in other areas of the state. Harrisonburg stands out, Accomack stands out. So I'm happy to answer any questions about this data profile of immigrants during the Q&A. And if we have time, we could tour the interactive maps a little bit. But at this point, I wanted to hand it back over to Salta.
Thank you. Now I would like to present the data that we received from the interviews. In analyzing the data, we were guided by the framework of immigrant integration that is from the literature, expansive and interdisciplinary literature on immigrant integration. This vast body of literature identifies 7 different dimensions of integration. The first dimension is sociocultural, which includes indicators such as language acquisition, religion, and levels of criminality. The second dimension is socioeconomic, and it includes educational attainment, income, occupation, and poverty levels. All of these indicators are compared to native-born Americans to gauge the level of integration of immigrants. The third dimension is the political and civic dimension, and it includes rates of naturalization and political engagement. Legal status is the major dimension that affects most other dimensions. It affects things like access to employment. It affects things like ability to get a mortgage for your first house. And we also look at health and access to healthcare. We did not look much at the family dimension in the scope of this report, but through the GIS analysis that Dr. Risler conducted, we did look at the spatial dimension of integration. We have organized the themes from the interviews according to these dimensions of immigrant integration that I just mentioned. Within the socioeconomic dimension, the biggest theme was that immigrants don't know where to find information about services, benefits, and other resources that are available to them. The quote on this slide illustrates this theme. Another major theme included so-called brain waste. And that is a phenomenon that occurs when immigrants do not use their education that they brought from their home countries, or they significantly underutilize their skills after migrating. So the quintessential example would be a taxi driver who was trained as a medical doctor or a college professor in his or her home country. Another theme indicated that many immigrants become trapped in poorly paid and exploitative jobs. And this is either because they're undocumented or because they have limited knowledge about how to find better jobs, about how to send their resumes, and about how to conduct themselves during a job interview. Another theme was lack of affordable housing. And of course, it's a major problem, not only for immigrants, but for other Virginians as well. But immigrants face additional barriers, such as inability to rent directly from the landlords because they don't have credit history or because they don't have proper documentation. Lack of financial literacy, not knowing how the banking system works, the importance of credit history was another frequently mentioned barrier. Barriers to education was another theme that came up in the interviews. And these barriers include the tuition costs, which are quite high for Americans, but they are astronomical for many recent immigrants. Yet other barriers to education included the inability of some parents to fully engage with the schools which, as we know, is very important for the kids' educational success. The quote on this slide illustrates the importance of having assistance in getting oriented, where to get education, how to pay for it, getting all the necessary documents to apply, including the Social Security card. All of these things are important for an immigrant to be able to fully function in the United States. So having someone who can explain these things makes a huge difference in how quickly and successfully immigrants can integrate in Virginia. This other quote illustrates the importance of workforce training in helping immigrants train for professions in which they can find decently paid work that allows them to further develop their skills and to reach their potential. And I'll pause here for a few seconds so that you can read the quote. At this point, I would like to hand it off to Dr. Grisler.
Thank you. So moving now to the sociocultural dimension, if in socioeconomic, the lack of information was the top theme, here the highest theme was the language barrier and the way that that interacted with so many things, including making immigrants vulnerable to being taken advantage of. And this quote illustrates that interaction. Other themes that were there included the need for, or barriers to learning English, the need for language access, which I'll talk about more in a moment, the importance of sometimes cultural translation, and whether Virginia and the United States as a whole are a welcoming society, and the role of discrimination within that. If we go to the next slide, of course, many immigrants overcome the barrier of the language barrier by learning English, but we all know that that process takes time. And so our interviews, not surprisingly, also identified access to information in their native language as a way of overcoming the language barrier in the short term. This quote points out how some localities have been able to do that for small business owners who speak Spanish, and that automated website translation is better than nothing, or gives some degree of access. That said, we've all probably heard stories of the mistakes that Google Translate or some other translation engine can make. Other interviews highlighted the importance of language line services, where someone can go in and someone at an agency who doesn't speak their home language, they can both simultaneously call a translator, an interpreter, and provide that means of communication. That those can be important for critical situations like healthcare and education, as well as other services. Another caveat that emerged in interviews was, again, the diversity of the immigrant communities. Many agencies and nonprofits have made strides in Spanish, but providing language access to the 400,000 Virginians who speak other languages than Spanish is something that this interviewee highlighted as a place that agencies still need to improve. And as we take a moment just to soak that in, you know, this person was speaking from an Asian American perspective and the diversity of that community. I'll go ahead and hand it back to Salta to wrap up our presentation.
So for immigrants to be able to fully participate in political processes, as I've mentioned earlier, legal immigration status is a key issue. Undocumented immigrants cannot vote, but they're also reluctant to engage in other processes, such as participating in parent-teacher associations or in town halls with local politicians. The public charge rule, which was enforced under the previous administration, has created a lot of fear among immigrants and reluctance to seek services for which they are actually eligible. And this quote on the slide illustrates that kind of a fear. Before we highlight several relevant recommendations that we've made in this report, we wanted to give you a link via this QR code to a one-page summary of the report that includes a listing of the 10 broad recommendations we have made based on our findings. We will also have a page with all of the QR codes that we've mentioned at the end of the presentation. So if you didn't have time to capture the QR code, and my understanding is that if you bring your phone to the Zoom screen, it should be able to read this QR code. But if you didn't have time to do that, as we advance the slides, we will again have all of the QR codes in one place at the end of the presentation. And we have also made the copies, paper copies or electronic copies of the presentation available for your use. Based on the interviews that we have conducted, we propose several recommendations. The first suggestion is to create a centralized online portal, perhaps hosted by the Office of New Americans, that has information about all the services and resources available in Virginia, all in one place. Because not all immigrants have sufficient technological skills and literacy level to access this information online, we also suggest establishing a hotline where bilingual navigators can provide this information to immigrants over the phone. And a model of this type of a multi-pronged approach has been piloted in the state of New York, so we can definitely learn best practices from them. The most frequently mentioned barrier, as we talked about earlier, was the language barrier. So we propose a threefold strategy to linguistic integration. The first is access to high quality, affordable English classes at various locations that work for both working adults and for stay-at-home parents while their children are at school. The second is improving language access to services at government agencies. A language access study was already conducted a couple of years ago, so we will not duplicate those recommendations. The third aspect of linguistic integration is to recruit and retain bilingual frontline staff at government agencies and nonprofits that serve immigrants. It is important for the Commonwealth to capitalize on the human capital that immigrants bring with them to further strengthen Virginia's economy. It is critical to match labor where there are labor shortages and the demand for their services. So a first step that we recommend is to perform supply and demand analysis across the sectors and occupations of the economy of Virginia. This analysis should include an evaluation of labor shortages by skill set, by vocational certifications, and educational qualifications. Then mechanisms should be put in place to guide immigrants to these sectors and help them develop the necessary skills to meet the market demand. Immigrant workers would also benefit from access to career counselors who could advise them on how to get their foreign credentials recognized and certified, and about occupations that might be a good fit given their formal training and experience, as well as given the labor market needs in Virginia. It would also be extremely helpful to establish an apprenticeship or internship program with a strong workplace guidance and mentorship component to orient recent immigrants to the U.S. workplace culture. Such program would also enable them to obtain relevant professional experience in the United States. Our neighbor Canada has such programs, and these programs could be used as a model. Foreign trained professionals would also benefit from language training that's focused on the terminology and business practices related to their occupation in the United States. It would also be helpful to set up alternative licensing pathways for immigrants who are unable to overcome regulatory barriers to enter the professions in which they were trained abroad. So, for example, to become a medical doctor in the United States, if you were trained overseas, takes a significant investment of time, resources, and training. And not all medical professionals are able to practice the profession in the United States, right? But it would be quite a waste to have foreign trained medical doctors doing something else, like driving taxis. So if they're not able to become medical doctors, they would be well advised to pursue something in the medical field, maybe physician's assistant, maybe nursing profession. So these alternative licensing pathways could be very helpful, both for immigrants, but also for us, where we could address the shortages that are currently significant in the medical profession. And finally, public-private partnerships could be developed to incentivize employers to implement evidence-based initiatives to recruit, hire, train, and retain refugees and SIVs. This is especially valuable for refugees who are professionals in their home countries, but have not found a way to use their skills in Virginia. As we wrap up these recommendations, we wanted to leave you with one final voice. This is again from a service provider who works with immigrant entrepreneurs. A reminder that immigrants are often very resilient and they find ways to build and grow businesses in our collective future. But that could be even more accomplished and more effective with the right targeted supports and partnerships. So now we would like to move on to the period for questions and conversation. And in addition to answering any questions you may have, as researchers, we're also curious about what your insights are on these questions and the potential that adult education efforts can play in immigrant integration. So I'll come back to the slide, but I wanted to give you an option to look at the QR codes and maybe capture them if you'd like. So I'll pause here for 10 seconds and I'll go back to our question slide.
Thanks. And just to say that if you're not a QR code user or don't have your phone or tablet with you, the links for the story maps and the one pager are in the chat queue.
So with that, I would like to open it up for questions. I believe we have 10 minutes, if I'm not mistaken.
That's about right, and thank you so much. Good morning, Rebecca. I see you putting comments in the chat. So you can either put comments in the chat or come off mute to ask your question.
This is Rebecca. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So one of the things I put a comment in the chat, but I wanted to highlight is we have helped a couple of Afghan families who are refugees and resettled in last winter in our neighborhood. And one of the things that we came up against was, to your point about their skills and the, not being able to apply their skills, some of them have very specific jobs. And it's one thing to say they have English language skills and they have experience. But for example, one was an HVAC system tech in Afghanistan. But coming here, even though he speaks fluent English, we're a trade and union-based country in terms of some of these jobs. And so it's not as simple as just going and applying for a job in some cases. There's also maybe different equipment and they're not sure will, those skills transfer. So trade jobs can be very open, but can still have barriers. And I think that's something that we could actually address, but is a very specific area. Another person was a travel agent for the US government in Afghanistan, which is a very interesting job and very specific role. But again, he ended up as a security guard here, even though he speaks fluent English and works on computers every day, because that's such a unusual job to have. He didn't know the terminology, as you had kind of called out in some other cases, or how to access it. So I think sometimes there is almost a translation challenge of what is the job called here, but also how do we, when somebody has a very specific job, I don't know how we can best help them to navigate maybe some more esoteric processes in the job market here versus more generalized skills of in kitchens, for example, or in construction that tend to be very common across countries and cultures.
Thank you for that feedback. I mean, that's such an illuminating story, right? And it's unfortunately so typical. And this is where we think the human capital that immigrants bring with them, we should find ways to better use it, both for the economy and for them. And we've been thinking about how to set up these types of mentorship or apprenticeship programs. And I think one of the ways this could be done is a partnership with professional associations. And there are a lot of members of associations who are willing to give their time to mentor somebody, right? A recent immigrant, or those who might be retired and they have a lot of know-how, but no way to use it on a daily basis. And setting up those mentorship programs to help guide these new immigrants toward what they need to learn about this profession, right? What type of certification they need. It's so profession specific that I think one cookie cutter approach wouldn't quite work, but we have a lot of human capital here as well, especially among retirees, that they're willing to share, they know a lot, but we just haven't made those connections yet. And I think this is something that we need to think about more in depth, maybe in the format of a task force. But Dr. Risler, did you have any follow up on that? I think I inadvertently interrupted somebody. I'm sorry, I cannot see your faces.
No, that's okay. It's Rebecca again. I was just going to say, I apologize. I joined late, so I was traveling, but are your emails on here anywhere? Because I actually work for a software company. We have a piece of software I think might help that potentially could maybe serve as a pilot to do some matching of people with, anyway, are your emails somewhere in the presentation?
Right there, I advanced to page 31.
Oh, perfect.
And I think that would be a great idea to match through a software and technology. So please do reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk and brainstorm.
Thank you.
And this is Grant. Just the other thing to add to that, coming out of the interviews that we had, there's the challenge logistically of getting something set up that meets the needs, gets people, retrained in the language, if it's just the language, all of that element, which is, important for adult education, especially. But the other thing that's very broad is the theme that came through of just the importance of having a way for that information to be shared and found by people that are looking for it, whether that's the immigrant themselves or neighbors that are trying to help them find it. And so, just kind of the importance of continuing to think about, well, how does somebody find their way to this program? We had one interviewee who worked for a locality doing trainings in a language other than English. But she said, oftentimes we have these great trainings, but people don't know about them. And so we end up doing the training for 2 people instead of what we had hoped for 12. And so not just having the training, but having the communications. And I guess it's kind of keeping that in the budget as well. How do we do outreach around this is a critical question.
Are there any other questions? Then perhaps we could turn the question back to the audience, given the recommendations that we've made and given the stories we've shared with you. What role do you think adult education in Virginia could play in facilitating the integration process? Any thoughts on that?
This is Heidi from the conference room. Sorry, we don't have our camera working. We hope that you can stay, Drs. Liebert and Risler, because we do serve so many immigrants and refugees, and it's a growing area of our service, an area that we are really focused on. So the information that you have provided is so valuable to us and our grantees, because these are the stories that we hear as well, and are working to improve our workforce development and occupational training efforts for this population. So I'll be sharing a little bit of that toward the end of the meeting.
Well, wonderful. I will stay if Dr. Risler is available. He might stay. And thank you so much for this opportunity. Again, we were very pleased to be able to share the results of our study with you. And we hope that this will be the beginning of a collaboration on various aspects of what services we could come up with to better integrate immigrants in Virginia.
Well, thank you so much. And we know that we asked you to provide only a tiny slice of your very large study. You could teach us a lot by coming back and presenting another slice someday. So thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Williams. And I know that we've had some more members join us. If you wanted to finish the roll call and just a couple minutes for introduction before we take a quick break.
Okay, this is Tammy Dean again. Thank you very much, Doctors Lever and Rissler, on your presentation. It was very informative. Before we go on to the next speaker, I'm going to ask the members who came in late if you could put your name in the chat so then I can update the attendance. I would greatly appreciate that. And then at this time, I think we should be able to take a 5-minute break before Dr. Williams introduces our next guest speaker, Dr. Cheryl Ayers.
Thank you so much. I'm going to pause the recording for 5 minutes and then we will start back up.
Okay, thank you very much, Heidi.
Cheryl, did you want to try and just try
Yes,
your
ma'am.
video?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
And should I go ahead, since my camera is working, should I go ahead and keep my camera going?
Yes, that's fine. That's fine. And just know that I paused the recording, but the live stream is continuing.
Okay. All right, so here it is. Do you see Young Junior?
We see the start screen, but go ahead and hit play so we can see if it's the sound.
I am 25 years old.
Yes.
I'll
We
be
can.
26
Awesome.
November 7th.
Okay, let me get this back to the beginning. All right, perfect.
Okay, we'll be back with you in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
All right, Cheryl, Tammy, are you ready for me to restart?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. This is Tammy Dean. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting back. Hi, this is Tammy Dean. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting back to order. And Dr. Williams, if you could go ahead and introduce our next guest speaker, Dr. Ayers, I would appreciate it.
Will do. Will do.
Thank you.
Good morning again, everyone. Dr. Cheryl Ayers started her career as a career and technical education high school teacher and cooperative education coordinator. Dr. Cheryl Ayers has nearly 25 years of experience in creating and delivering customized professional development programs, undergraduate, graduate university courses, curricula, and certification examinations in economics, personal finance, and entrepreneurship education for K-12 pre and service teachers, adult educators, and service providers, and workforce development practitioners. Her research and scholarship focuses on teaching economics, personal finance, and entrepreneurship in an accessible and multidisciplinary way that empowers individuals for more productive and fulfilling lives and careers. Dr. Ayers is passionate about providing retroactive opportunities for disenfranchised, marginalized, and underserved adults with limited education and income who did not have the opportunity to learn about economics, personal finance, and entrepreneurship in school or at home. Her vision is to be part of the solution in reducing poverty, stimulating economic growth, and empowering all members of society with a more prosperous future. She recently published the first research-based theory of effective economics instruction at the secondary level and is the National 2023 NAEE Economic Pedagogy Scholar Award winner. She earned a BS in Career and Technical Education from Virginia Tech, an MBA from the University of Lynchburg, and a PhD in Curriculum and Instruction, Teacher Education and Development from the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. Dr. Ayers currently serves as the founder, director of the Economic Empowerment Project and Center for Economic Education at Virginia Tech University. Dr. Ayers.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And thank you to the advisory committee for this invitation. And Dr. Riesler and Liebert, what a wonderful lead in to my presentation. And I'll start by saying my mom is a first generation immigrant. She came in 1972. My brother was 6 years old from Germany. I was 2 years old and didn't speak any English. In fact, I remember she would tell me stories that she wouldn't even answer the phone because the services, I think, were just getting started around that time period based on your research. So I am super excited as a German American to hear that we are moving in the right direction. And hopefully part of what I offer might also move us along. So thank you for that introduction again, Anthony. I wear a lot of hats, probably too many to get into, but my day job is an economics professor at Virginia Tech. And then I also have a side hustle by working with other national organizations such as COABE, ACTE, and the Correctional Education Association. So real quick, my objectives today are twofold. I give this talk periodically in various forms. I want to go over some research-based reasons why adult ed should seriously consider integrating more entrepreneurship and personal finance into whatever programs they're offering so that the adult learners are better prepared for what we're now in, the new innovation and gig economy. And then I'm going to conclude with a few related professional development opportunities that might help in that regard. So I'll say my own consulting business is the Economic Empowerment Project, and it really started with me, as Anthony just mentioned. So I've been doing K-12 economics, personal finance, and entrepreneurship professional development for almost 25 years. And in the back of my mind, since I started with humble beginnings as well, I was always thinking about what about the adult learners who didn't have the opportunity to take our required economics and personal finance course, which, by the way, I was part of the Virginia Council team that helped legislate that many years ago, went on to write those learning standards. And so my heart has always been for the underdog in general. And so this was just sort of my way of trying to gain support. I wasn't getting support in my day job. So I said, well, let me just branch out on my own. And thanks to Heidi and her support, things have really blossomed on a national and somewhat international scale. But I'll just say that because economics was my first love, although entrepreneurship might be my first love currently, economics and the economic way of thinking really is what I integrate in both my personal finance and entrepreneurship professional development programs as that secret sauce, or the way in which to empower, for example, better personal finance decisions or better entrepreneurship decisions. And so I just wanted to show you that framework that guides all of my work, my research, and my professional development programming. So I'm going to go over very quickly 8 reasons, and you will get these slides. I also did a similar presentation for COAID for last year's Adult Education and Family Literacy Week. So I have hyperlinked that 1-hour webinar on this slide. And then ACTE has asked me to do a similar presentation geared towards CTE high school teachers, and that will be on November 2nd. If you'd like to catch that, I've included the registration link as well. But really quickly, so I think it's no secret that in 2020, COVID really was a catalyst for historic unemployment rates. We reached almost 15% in the United States. And we saw not long after that we're calling the period the Great Resignation, where people were reevaluating their work-life balance. Some didn't even have a choice, and they were turning to, in record numbers, startups. And what we found looking back from an entrepreneur perspective is that the business owner who didn't have employees that could turn on a dime, embrace change in new ways, like an entrepreneur is trained to do, did not survive. So it's definitely important. And I want to be real clear, and I'll mention it a few more times. So entrepreneurship, it's not just for people who want to start a business, right? Many will try, lots of them still fail, but it's also for the entrepreneur, and we'll talk more about that. Someone who uses the entrepreneurial way of thinking for someone else in the workplace, for their employer. And that's critical that we start having businesses with employees that have that entrepreneurial mindset. So you can see here, I'll just kind of, again, go through this pretty quickly, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics has published the monthly business applications right around COVID 2021, 2022 on a national scale. You can see we almost doubled the applications. Again, just showing graphically that more and more people became interested in entrepreneurship. And this is a wonderful music video. In fact, Pharrell Williams and Jay-Z made a music video. And if you'll watch towards the end, we won't watch it together, come back to it. It's almost a documentary highlighting some of the businesses started by our more marginalized populations in the United States. So it's an excellent video that sort of recaps the COVID period as the catalyst for entrepreneurship. And you can also click on a census.gov map to show, you can see the larger the circle, the more monthly business applications were submitted. And you can see Virginia, in terms of its relative size, that circle shows that we also were, in fact, along with California, Texas, and Florida, starting to take a serious look in 2021 at starting more small businesses in our state. And if you click on each of the different states, it's quite interesting. You can see here in Virginia where our hot spots were, right? So Northern Virginia, no surprise. Richmond, though, a close second. Coastal Virginia, Norfolk area, definitely had a lot of activity when it comes to people submitting applications and saying, you know what, I'm interested in perhaps this lifestyle. And in Richmond City alone, I just clicked on that particular circle, there was over a 1/3 increase in 2021 of people who lived in Richmond City who at least submitted an application to start a business. So really important, I think. All right, reason number 7. So I think it's no secret, most adult educators and high school teachers will tell you that they have students regularly say, oh, I'm going to start a business. Now, whether they do or they don't, doesn't matter, right? But we need to at least be listening and meeting them at where they're at and giving them the resources to at least pursue that career choice. And we know that 50% said that they were going to start a business, and then 40%, I thought this was amazing. In fact, if it wasn't a credible source, and by the way, all of these references are on the last slide. If it wasn't a credible source, I really would be questioning the 40% in 2022 of all Americans actually had a side hustle. Now, we know that's in part due because technology is making it much, much easier, but that's significant, and that really should raise some eyebrows. And sort of in conclusion, with the student interest, you know, we as educators, and I did teach entrepreneurship when I was a CTE teacher in Frederick County, northern-ish Virginia. You know, this is going to optimize student engagement, especially when it's interwoven as a real world context for those times, if you will, dry or core academic subjects. And it's also allowing, I mean, imagine an education system where we allow students to pursue their own unique interests and passions at the secondary level. And I think it's no secret that the day of large employer security and retirement is over for a lot of us. And so now more than ever, whether it's personal finance or a career choice, we really need to come up with a plan B for a lot of our citizens. So I love, you'll see in a minute when I tell you about the Institute, I always invite grassroots entrepreneurs. And this is Mullins Mowing out of Wise, Virginia, Southwest Virginia. Rural Southwest Virginia. And the guy in the middle, Mr. Mullins, he graduated from high school, Wise County High School 2 years ago. He started his business with just a lawnmower, and you can see that he has certainly done well for himself and has been able to afford heavier pieces of equipment. His fiance is to his left, and then he went on to hire some of his classmates, some of whom are still in high school. But a really nice grassroots picture of what entrepreneurship can do, even at the high school level. Now, this is the video I would like to show you. This comes out of Detroit, Michigan, and it's part of their adult ed workforce development program, which I would love if we could, as a state, produce something similar. I'm going to introduce you in just a minute, but by the way, happy Careers in Construction Month. In October, I did take a look at the map, and it looks like Virginia, no surprise, has fully proclaimed October as Careers in Construction Month. I'll say I'm always so proud as I travel around the country and do presentations to be having had my start in the Virginia Department of Ed school system. I mean, I think we have been doing CTE. We have been let's just say a trendsetter since I was a teacher over 30 years ago. And so I'm always so pleased. So we need to get something similar to what Michigan has produced. So let me quickly share. It's only 2 minutes, but what I want you to see here is that it's great that we certainly have CTE career fields for both secondary and post-secondary students. However, pairing it, and I'll make this more of a point in just a minute, but pairing it with all of our amazing CTE career fields is really the way of the future. And you'll see here that Donald not only has the degree in construction, he also has a certificate in entrepreneurship. And so he was able to branch out on his own and start his own business, right? It's not always about, and we do a great job preparing our students to work for someone else. Everybody enjoys that. And just putting in their back pocket this opportunity, whether it's now or later or during retirement, to actually start a side hustle in the evenings or on the weekends or what have you. Maybe it becomes a full career, doesn't matter. But just to get them prepared and thinking about other options, especially our immigrant population, and we'll talk more about that shortly. So let's see if this works. Heidi and I practice it during the break. It's only a couple minutes. Share sound. Here we go. All right. Somebody jump in and stop me if you do not hear and see this video.
My name Donald Young Jr. I am 25 years old. I'll be 26 December 7th this year. I just didn't have no interest in school. I had good grades, but I wasn't there sometimes. In my class, I'd be in somebody else's class. I'd be in the gym. You know, I just wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. It wasn't that I didn't know how to do the work. It was challenging me. It was just that I had other distractions. You know, people try to belittle you when they know you ain't got no, high school diploma and stuff like that. They try to, down talk and, you don't get the same as everybody else get, when they got a diploma because they feel like you're not as smart and you can't prove it because, you ain't got a high school diploma. So at the same time, I just had to make a better change for myself so everything could be a little better, And then it was just for me, you know what I'm saying? I wanted to know I can do it, boost my self-confidence and so I can open a few other doors at the same time. I would recommend it because it's a great program. They helping you. Everybody talking about, we ain't got no help or, no kind of guidance, but it's like right here for real, And it could take you a long way if you use it and put your energy into it, or figure out what you can do with it, My company name is Decor Developments LLC. We specialize in tub, tile, and countertop reglazing. Business is actually going good though. I haven't been posting as much as I usually been posting because I really don't have to that much no more. But I don't think they really can find somebody that's like better than me for real. Like that really care about the work and not gonna do, whatever and make sure everything good, especially the pricing. That's another thing. It's really the pricing. I don't know. They know I care about my work though. That's definitely a factor. Certain things in my life I had to change, certain ways I had to put to the side, but I would like to thank Software Solutions though for all the help that they've been giving me though. They definitely helped me get a long way, and with my progress and all my changes, they definitely played a part in it.
All right. So you might agree that
My name, Donald Young Jr.
That is the gold standard in my mind on how we can better serve adult learners in Virginia in particular. Get back to my PowerPoint. And what you're going to see here momentarily is that the entrepreneurial mindset that Donald has is also going to enhance one's personal life. And I'll spend a minute or two on that. So we should be back to the PowerPoint slide that has Donald on it. Okay.
We're good. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Heidi. So reason number 6. So this intra-entrepreneurship mindset, to be clear, entrepreneurship is when you use the entrepreneurial way of thinking on the job for someone else. So the traditional employee route. And then the entrepreneur is going to be someone who actually starts their own side hustle or business. Here's what's really, really cool about this. I hope you'll get excited like I do. The things that we always hear from employers on what they want in new hires has a significant, and I would hesitate to even estimate, but it's over 50%, a significant overlap between what employers say they want, and they really are looking for the soft skills, as we know, because things are changing so quickly. They say, give them X, Y, and Z, workforce readiness skills, and we'll keep them up to date on the technical skills that they need. But that overlap with the entrepreneurial mindset in and of itself is extraordinarily motivating. And in particular, when we talk about the entrepreneurial mindset, and I'll give you many more adjectives to describe what I mean by that, but things like opportunity recognition, critical thinking, problem solving, initiative, creativity. You can imagine a workforce that has those skill sets. And, not to get political, but to some degree, our ability to innovate as a nation is a national security effort, right? We need to remain on our game, and we do that by having employees of other people's businesses having this entrepreneurial mindset. And my recommendation would be that all students moving forward, and again, I'm going to go ahead and self-identify as highly biased, but the research shows that we really need to integrate in some way or fashion at least one entrepreneurship course somewhere in our citizens' educational career. And here is our familiar 21st century workplace readiness skills. And again, if you went through each of these and correlated to what entrepreneurship teaches, even in Virginia, our CTE courses, we have 2, the intro and then the advanced entrepreneurship, the overlap is tremendous. So the next reason would be the same intra-entrepreneurial mindset is job security. I think this is really, really important, right? Because employers now are hiring for things like a manager of foresight activation, a senior strategic foresight manager, again, looking into the future and innovating, solving old problems with new solutions, innovation manager. These are new to our economy, and it's in our best interest to make sure our graduates are going to be successful in these new roles so that they're able to advance. And I'll say that when an adult learner, for example, completes some kind of, and we'll talk about this in a minute, some kind of entrepreneurial program, and they sit down for a job interview and, for example, has the certification entrepreneurship on their resume, talking point that's going to set them apart from the others in the labor pool, in that they are able to talk and use the language of distinguishing themselves from others that are applying for the same job by being able to see new possibilities or look at, again, previous problems with an innovation-based framework. So highly important for our workforce development efforts. And here's the thing I think people definitely forget, that the entrepreneurial mindset has been correlated to not only success for starting a business and for working for others who want an innovation-based business. It is now correlated compared to the general U.S. workforce. People who graduate with some kind of entrepreneurial coursework have higher rates. Look at the bolded words: college enrollment, higher earnings, and job satisfaction. So I personally and others would agree and perhaps disagree, but this entrepreneurship is here to stay, and it really can be a silver bullet in so many ways. So take a look here. I'm going to continue talking, but here's just a relatively brief list of what I mean by the entrepreneurial mindset that are also life skills. Right, as you go through these, I think you could probably quickly say, oh, okay, yeah, that's good for someone who wants to start a business. That's good for someone who works for someone else who has a business. And by the way, it's good for being a better citizen, a better family member, a better coworker. All of these skills are what we mean by the entrepreneurial mindset. So this is totally exciting, in my opinion. I was invited to do a presentation for the Correctional Education Association symposium in partnership with COABE several months ago, and preparing for that talk. There's a study out of Texas, and this one's a good one because we know Texas is so large, and the participant, the sample was quite large as well. But this should blow your socks off, right? The people who were currently incarcerated, they have what's called the Prison Entrepreneurship Program, the PEP program. The people who were incarcerated, who participated in that entrepreneurship program, they returned to prison at only a 7% rate compared to the 23% rate of those who returned that didn't graduate in this program. I mean, that is significant and huge in terms of creating a better quality of life for all of our citizens. And why this matters, or just sort of the cliff notes on why that actually is the case, and the article goes on to connect it to, people who start a business, and maybe they have a day job just to get their feet underneath them again and get some income flowing in, but they're able to maybe on the weekends start to look at it in a very gradual way, things that make them want to get up in the morning, things that make them feel free and not, being always told what to do from, someone half their age. So this idea of entrepreneurship is so much more than business 101, right? It's about instilling freedom and hope and empowerment to the people who do not feel empowered. And how you do that in adult ed is that you go ahead and capitalize on the things they already bring to the table, right? Using that asset-based lens, not looking at, oh, here are the things that you lack and here's all the classes you need to take. Let's sit them down and say, here's what you're good at. Here's what your family says you're good at. Oh, your friends, they're always asking you to do X, Y, and Z. I bet you're good at that, right? And so that is just an amazing motivational strategy in and of itself. And the other cool thing that I love, as I've mentioned, is this entrepreneurial mindset is healthy living skills 101, whether you're re-entering society or you've been in it your whole life, right? Because this entrepreneurial network gives you voice, often to the voiceless. It produces agency, especially for those re-entering society, right? That is not always relevant or prevalent. This whole idea of networking with healthy social networks, hopefully trying to get some social capital in place, replacing maybe some of the less productive social circles. And this whole notion of stability and a sense of commitment, like that helps people go back to the old lifestyle in ways that I'm not sure much else does. The other thing I'll say, and then we'll move on when it comes to our incarcerated population, is that we know when people re-enter society, it's not like they're getting a high-paying job, right? And oftentimes those are entry-level positions, and there isn't the trust or even the opportunity to advance. And so in that way, entrepreneurship can help increase those wages, again, temporarily, perhaps just in the evenings or on the weekends, and the opportunities are going to be expanded quite immensely. And why this is important is in this same study in 2018, those who completed that PEP program went on to earn significantly higher wages than the minimum wage. And so that in and of itself created this feeling of financial security and well-being. And we'll get to the whole personal finance piece to this puzzle. But I think we can all agree when you have a hard time paying bills, we know it's still the number one reason for divorce in many instances, right? But it's really hard to stay motivated if you can't even pay your bills. And so then the other thing is that, you know, reentry challenges, we know, I've had some friends who were felons and they would come out and they can't even get jobs that they want because of that stigma, unfortunately, like mental health challenges. And so we need to be offering some kind of alternative to these traditional reentry workforce development programs. All right, moving on. Another reason to seriously consider integrating entrepreneurship is the whole achievement gap that we've been trying to close since I was learning to be a teacher at Virginia Tech in 1990. And so we know now more than ever, though, there's a lot of funding, thankfully, being directed towards our underserved, underrepresented communities, women, minority-owned startups. And here is, which I hope our first Dr. Riesler and Liebert are still with us. So we know in 2019, this hopefully will blow your mind as well. 22% of all the people self-employed in the United States were immigrant business owners. So that should cause pause. And, you know, part of that is we find, and our previous presenters alluded to this, is that people come to this country and they own businesses in other countries, but because they don't have the lingo and the language and know all of the things that go into starting a business in our country, they often pursue other less satisfying and less paying jobs because they just can't work their way in. Nobody's holding their hand to start a similar business in our country. And what I love about this is the research is really clear, especially for youth, that this is one of those level the playing fields. That's cliched, but it definitely holds true here. Because if you think about it, the entrepreneurial mindset, when it creates intrinsic motivation, the growth mindset, resourcefulness, adaptability, blah, 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 these are the things that pull people out of those generational cycles of poverty and start a business. And then finally, reason number 2, we're almost done with these research-based reasons, is entrepreneurship is just excellent teaching 101, right? When you use entrepreneurship as the multidisciplinary contextualized lens for teaching any of the core academic subjects, all in my humble opinion, all of the CTE career pathways are ABE, ESL, GED, the IET programs that are up and coming. I just did a webinar for COAB on entrepreneurship IETs. I think Heidi's going to talk about that when we get to her part. But just using this in the classroom not only creates that workforce readiness skills, but it prepares students for life and college. And the students show up a little bit more often, and they're a little bit more motivated to learn the other subjects. And then in conclusion, when it comes to workforce instruction 101, you know, regardless of the state, and I give this talk, but I always am proud of our Virginia 5 Cs and our profile of a graduate, whatever the buzzword is, Virginia, we recently in the last several years, you know, we were all about the performance-based learning. Us CTE people have been doing competency-based learning. I'm so glad that is now a hot new topic, even though we could have told you that years ago. Project-based learning, inquiry-based learning for our social studies teachers, whatever you're teaching, entrepreneurship will make it come alive in very effortless and seamless ways. And then finally, I'll end this portion. I'm going to check my time, better talk a little bit faster. I would recommend, and I do this for all states, so Virginia is no exception. You know, it's great, and we do an excellent job in our CTE career pathways, but it's time that we start pairing it with entrepreneurship, as I've mentioned, so that anybody at any given point in time is able to pursue their own business in these amazing career clusters that we offer. And I'll say that as faculty at Virginia Tech, we are ranked in the top 25 schools in the nation who integrate entrepreneurship through all of our degree programs, right? So it's not just the high school CTE programs. The higher ed trends are also suggesting that whether you're getting a degree in computer science or you're becoming a physicist, let's integrate this entrepreneurial way of thinking in big and small ways in all of our degree programs. And we're proud that we're setting trends in that regard. Okay. So the U.S. Entrepreneurship Certification Examination is going into year 4. It has been officially released. It has not been easy, I'll be honest. But the reason this matters is, again, we know the value of credentials, right? Sets people apart in job interviews, getting a loan, for example, if need be. But the thing in red is what I want to focus on. So the only thing that keeps me up at night with entrepreneurship education is not giving students enough entrepreneurship instruction to actually start a successful business, and to somehow assess that they have a baseline understanding of what that requires, right? Still, 50% of businesses still fail in 5 years. And we know the research shows that's because people just started, they have a false sense of security, like, oh, I can do it. And then they invest their own savings and different things. And then at the end of that, it is devastating because now they have to file for bankruptcy. It is a vicious cycle that spirals out of control very quickly when we don't have some kind of credential that measures baseline of understanding of entrepreneurship skills and knowledge. So I just highly recommend that whatever that looks like for you, make sure that they, you don't let them leave the nest without a firm understanding of entrepreneurship. So this exam, I'll be brief, has been, so I actually started with the Virginia CTE entrepreneurship courses. It was originally just for Virginia. And then as I traveled the country, others were like, well, we want it too. And so it is now a national, hence the U.S. Entrepreneurship Certification Exam. It's run through PICSCO, who does a lot of the FBLA competition exams. And then it's sponsored by COABE, ACTE, and then the CEA. And then it was reviewed by SCORE and America's SBDC. And it was also with some other academics out of Silicon Valley, Santa Clara University, my own business institute, the longest running and most widely taken course in entrepreneurship. So it is rock solid. It is already being taken in adult ed and high school programs around the nation. I will be submitting it to the board in December so that it can officially get on that list that we're so proud of, and we have so many offerings. But either way, it's there for the taking. So currently, there's a manual that you're able to access. I'll give you that link shortly. There's a study guide, which is essentially a curriculum framework. It's 28 pages. And then there's a practice exam that's currently suitable for high school and adult secondary, so GED, IET programs. I am working on finalizing, hopefully to release next month, a practice exam. Heidi and I met, and before I rewrite the actual exam on a 4th to 5th to 6th grade-ish level, taking out the vocabulary words before putting it into the software, I actually paid specialists in ABE, ESL, and linguists to write the exam. I did not do it. But so the practice exam, we're hoping will be a scaffold where the students who are immigrants, for example, who have lower literacy levels can take that, and it's 118 questions practice exam to start preparing for the actual exam. So I hope in that way that it helps encourage more immigrants or people with lower literacy levels to not think, oh, you know, my English isn't good enough, so I'm not even going to establish that baseline of understanding. So I'm going to be slowly wrapping things up. Let me talk quickly about the COABE Online Institute. It is, we're in the 3rd institute. It's an annual thing that Heidi was, she introduced me to Sharon Bonnie, who has, both of them have been huge cheerleaders, and I would not be having this conversation with you if it wasn't for them too. So I always want to give them a shout out. So this is not what we teach. What we talk about is what we call resourcefulness or bootstrapping. And so this is just one slide from many. We talk about, okay, if push came to shove and you had to make some more money, what could you do with what you already have? It is not going to be about taking out some big loan that you probably don't even qualify for in the first place, right? So that's, I just want to give you a little flavor on how we do it. We talk about all sorts. The teachers in part A create a multidisciplinary lesson. And in part B, they actually create a business plan. I always do experiential learning. So the adult educators, and then for the ACT Institute, the high school teachers work through the assignments and so that they get a flavor for what their students will experience. And they also make modifications as they go. And we talk about, I always tell the adult educators, you know, pick something that's tangible, that doesn't require a lot of a high startup cost, just so you can process all of the entrepreneurship knowledge and skills in a way that's familiar. That's really important when you're instructing entrepreneurship. And I always tell teachers, you know, if you are not comfortable having each student start their own business, put them in groups. Start a class business, a coffee cart, you know, before basketball games, for example. You can teach all of this in so many ways. And then, as I've mentioned, my focus in my institute is always multidisciplinary. We're always making connections, and we're always taking it one step further and connecting the dots to Life Decisions 101. We certainly are keeping the pedagogy, the andragogy language front and center. And I won't go through this, come back to this, but this is just an example of how we connect the entrepreneurship to how these same entrepreneurship skills connect to life and other subjects that they're currently teaching. So the Co-Ed Institute, I spent about 2 years collecting 400 plus resources. It too started in Virginia and it caught on, and I had a request, and so I've taken it national. But essentially it's, as I've mentioned, it's about teaching everything that the teacher is already teaching, but almost kind of like spicing it up, if you will. Basic skills, core academic subjects, GED subjects, every class period, and there are 11 classes. We have national Zoom breakout groups, so for about 20-25 minutes, they talk about the assignments that they were working on in the previous week. I invite grassroots entrepreneur guest speakers, and including the Next Step community resources. And if you haven't noticed, we have an amazing network of SBDC and SCORE centers. And I'll say, though, that this is almost the step before that. Oftentimes these SBDC centers and SCORE mentors, they sort of want someone to come to them with, again, that baseline level of knowledge, because they don't have the money or the resources or the time to teach and mentor our adult learners. So they really are the next step. At least that's how I frame it. And they're instrumental in that U.S. entrepreneurship certification exam, saying, yeah, like if they can pass this exam, we are definitely, they're always willing anyway, don't get me wrong, but they would be appreciative if they came to them with that level of understanding. And I'm so excited because I know how expensive undergrad and graduate courses are. I was able to find in South Dakota a university who gives the credit for the Co-Ed conference annually, 3 hours of undergraduate or graduate university credit, or they can just take it for the 55 hours of licensure renewal. But it's only $165 extra. So you're getting the undergraduate or graduate course. I hate that I'm sounding like a salesperson, but it's just almost too good to be true. For $685, like to go into serve as an elective. So for our Virginia Tech pre-service teachers and secondary social studies, we're working to get that approved. So that is an elective option for our students and others. So I'm just now starting. And I'll put in the chat box really quick. Here is the link for the Institute flyer and exam if you'd like to take a look while I'm wrapping up. That is the wrong, actually. Let's continue on. Come back to this slide. I'll put it in the chat box when we get to the Q&A. So here are the days and the weeks. It's going to be on the flyer. It is a certification that Co-Ed has endorsed. They took a lot of time to not only attend the first institute, but to give a lot of feedback. So it is rock solid in that regard. Just to be clear, there's readings that come from a free OpenStax entrepreneurship textbook. All of the assignments, which become the curriculum, the adult educators work through, they tweak as they go along. And then there's a resource list of over 400 some resources. So they actually have the complete package that they work through. And I've had adult educators as quickly as the next day start using the assignment. So I really try not to waste time. You know, I don't want someone to spend a semester going through an institute and then spend a whole nother year trying to make sense of it and make it accessible to their students. So we build in time for that. There's the peer collaboration groups for networking nationally. We've had some international participants, and then there are exams that they have to pass, but they are well prepared to do so. The applications are limitless. I'll just mention one here in Charlottesville, Virginia, out of PhD school. I was a researcher at the University of Virginia, which is why I still live in Charlottesville, but do distance learning and some on-campus things at Virginia Tech. We have a homelessness aid program where we take our homeless population and they pick up kindling sticks starting around this time of year. They bundle them up and they sit in front of Kroger and different stores in Charlottesville, and they raise money that way. But they teach the entrepreneurial way of thinking with our homeless population in that way, and it will almost bring a tear to your eye. It's brilliant, but there are so many applications. AARP gave COABE a grant where I was the project manager just to get things started. So we've given $10,000 to adult ed programs. Hopefully the AARP Foundation will renew that grant. So be looking for that. That is so that people 50 and older increase their social connectedness and increase their income when perhaps their monthly checks are not enough. Who should attend? Everyone should attend, in my opinion. And I'll just leave you with this comment, and there are many. Please click on that and take a look. So this is my side hustle, and it's extremely exhausting because it just seems like I don't have enough hours in the day. So when I get kind of discouraged or just exhausted, I go back to some of these comments. So the first one is one that's probably 5 years old now, but the gift of an entrepreneurial mindset could be life-saving for disenfranchised populations. They desperately want to support their families, but they are not being taught that they have other options. They need to hear about the freedom of entrepreneurship to give them hope. Thank you for equipping me. So I'll just move on from that. The other thing that I'm working on is the Online Personal Finance Institute, which we've been running in Virginia for high school teachers for many years. And so I did have to recreate it. It's taken me over a year and I'm only halfway done, but I do hope to release it in February. But I'll just say quickly to connect the dots, we really need to make sure that our adult learners have the personal finance skills before they try business finance skills for obvious reasons, right? And at the intersection of personal finance and in economics is entrepreneurship. In fact, I was just in Fort Lauderdale giving a talk on this very thing, that you can teach you can teach personal finance and economics, almost all of those standards, through the lens of entrepreneurship. And here are just some of the buzzwords that I integrate through my entrepreneurship programming. Economics, we won't get into it, but those are some high level economic concepts. And then personal finance, there's so many connections, and the two back and forth. As a business owner, your money skills, and as a personal finance money skills practitioner, if you will, the overlap is tremendous, and they just strengthen each other. Or the opposite could be true, right? They definitely could have a negative impact if they're not what they need to be. And then this is everyone's favorite, circular flow. We teach this in civics classes in middle school, but you can see clearly you can't have a conversation about our economy, whether it's state or global or national, without talking about one of the two major decision makers in our economy, which is businesses, oftentimes in the form of an entrepreneur. So wonderful applications of Entrepreneurship 101. And here is where I am currently with the how I'm going to roll this out on February 19th. You can see all of the topics. They are, I think I covered about 95% of the national standards for personal finance through Jumpstart and the Council on Economic Education. It's going to be extremely exciting. The adult educators will learn the content by reviewing the resources, doing some reflection activities, games, simulations, etc. So that is something that's up and coming. In case you're not sold on why adult learners need to understand personal finance, I've written my own research piece, which I've linked on this slide. And of course, Links has its own teaching skills that matter, that give you wonderful resources on integrating financial literacy. And in conclusion, just a couple statistics, and then I promise I'll stop talking. So And then you can certainly click on this slide in just a second to get many more statistics, but this is shocking in my opinion. The 1.5 million US adult learners that COABE has researched with limited education and income often have low levels of financial literacy, right? No surprise to us, making them 6 times more likely to have trouble paying bills, 3 times more likely to be in significant debt, 3 times more likely to be unable to cover a $2,000 emergency, which cars quickly incur, 5 times more likely to lack enough savings to even cover 1 month of living expenses if they lose their job, and 4 times more likely to spend many, many hours dealing with and arguing about personal finance challenges. Like, that makes me sad. And then the other one, and then there'll be more in the middle, which I won't talk about, come back to it, but financial management. In conclusion, these skills offer, once again, freedom, hope, and empowerment so that our adult learners, we try to help reduce their stress in whatever way we can. And we know money is a big part of that, increasing their agency and financial choices while maybe, just maybe, breaking intergenerational cycles of poverty and reducing the risk of financial dependence, exploitation, and fraud, especially by our immigrant population. And with that said, I will take a breath and invite questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ayers. Does anybody have any questions
or comments?
Well, I have a comment. I think it was excellent information, and I really thank you for all the resources that you had within your presentation. And I think that the 2 guest speakers that we've had, Dr. Liebert and Dr. Rissler and yourself, definitely marry well together.
Agreed. Thank you.
Let me call on someone. This is Heidi. Duncan, are you available to come off mute? I'll call you out if you are. Awesome, I see you. I thought of you and all of your truck driving students in this entrepreneurship topic today, and wanted to ask if you would just reflect with the group for a minute how the entrepreneurship hope kind of runs through the truck driving school students, and how many of them do you think really could start up on their dream?
Well, we get a lot of interest in entrepreneurship, Heidi, and one of the things that I think Dr. Ayers hit on just before she finished up was, don't let them leave the nest without a full understanding of true entrepreneurship. And during the 6 short weeks that we have these students, we've got our hands full as far as teaching them how to pre-trip and back and drive those trucks on the highways. So, we don't have a lot of business or entrepreneurial classes that we're offering. We have quite a few students that are coming in that are have plans to go into the family trucking business, and they're learning it from the beginning stages. And that's kind of the way I did coming along, and it worked very well for me because I had a pretty good teacher. But we don't all have that luxury. What we encourage our students to do is to be a company driver, drive for somebody else for a couple of years, and let those people worry about the loads, $4.50 gallon fuel for equipment that gets 7 miles to the gallon, tires that are costing $450 a piece, and then you buy 18 of them, insurance, license, drivers. So, they've got their plate full coming out of truck driver training school, being a driver. And then down the road, they can worry about the owner operator part. We've got some, I would say quite a few that go into the owner operator or, you know, the business for themselves right off of the bat. I don't know what the success failure rate is, but I would say the failure rate is exceeding the success rate at this point. So we're not discouraging them, but we're encouraging them to do a step at a time before they get into this.
Well, I really appreciate you giving us some real life adult ed student examples. It is another discipline, you know, and Cheryl, you've really made that point, and it deserves to be taught and not just expected. And Paul, I see that you've put questions in the chat about small business administration. Do you want to answer that, Cheryl? You did say something about small business development centers in Virginia.
Let's see, Paul, can you unmute in the chat box? Is that where I'm looking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does the Small Business Administration have programs? You know, you talked about a lot of programs, and of course, the whole purpose of dealing with adult literacy and education. I was just curious. I would think, you know, is small business addressing this because of the fact that there is, you know, a lot of folks that don't, you know, English is a second language. Do they have any programs to support this?
Sure. Yeah. And if you go to SBDC and look for Virginia, I believe we have 22 centers, some large, some small, some with one person on staff, some with 4 in Charlottesville. But absolutely, they are an excellent resource, and they often do free webinars and different things. But what I have found over my 25 some years doing this is that I'm not sure if you heard that part of the presentation where because they actually endorse the U.S. Entrepreneurship Certification Exam, they often find, so for example, if it's rural Southwest Virginia and they have one person that's part-time based on government funding, right? They don't have time to necessarily teach someone who comes in through the doors and wants to, for example, start their own trucking side hustle. So they would prefer that somewhere, either at the secondary level or post-secondary level, that the high school students and adult learners have some kind of instruction so that when they show up to these small business development centers, that they're ready to kind of take that next step, because unfortunately they don't have the time and they probably were never trained to be teachers. And so a lot of different holes happen when we don't establish that baseline of entrepreneurship understanding. But yes, they are willing and able, and they do the very best they can, but understanding that they too are short-staffed and can't always do, you know, basic instruction on entrepreneurship.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much, Cheryl. And you can put some links in the chat.
I will. Thank you so much.
As we go along.
Perfect.
Okay.
Tammy, are you ready to?
Yep. So thank you very much again, Dr. Ayers. And so now Heidi, are you ready to go ahead and give us an update on the Virginia's adult education program for this year?
Yes.
Past year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Can folks, that is still the wrong slide. Can folks see the 6-year trend slide?
Yes.
Awesome. And I've got some slides here. I was able to give this presentation to the Virginia Board of Workforce Development 2 weeks ago. It was Adult Ed and Family Literacy Week, and so they invited me to have a little time on the agenda, and was happy to be able to give an update on our outcomes to the board, and had representation there at the meeting that was held in Bristol from our local program. So that was just really fantastic. Some of these slides are going to look familiar to the advisory committee. And so I'll go through them quickly, but I did want to share some of our trends and then give you an update on the program. This is not news to you all. Our purpose is extremely broad, all the way from helping adults become literate, become partners in their children's development and education, assist incarcerated individuals successfully re-enter, and of course, assisting immigrants is a key part of our purpose as well, and all the way through to preparing people for further post-secondary education, training, and employment. As you know, we went through a competition in the spring and we have made awards for 3 years. We are still working in the same 22 regional programs. The awards were made July 1. We have 22 regions, and going forward, we have 14 integrated English literacy and civics education, or IELCE grantees. They are based in, you could go back to the VCU slides. They are based in the population centers where there are higher levels of immigrants in the Urban Crescent, also in the Shenandoah Valley, and out at the Eastern Shore. Our funding, as we said in March, we had just a small cut from the federal office in our federal funding this year. Our state funds have been stable for many years. And the total that we're working with in 23-24 is $22.9 million. This you've seen before, but I'll just show you how the trend lines appear now. We're really proud of our programs. They have surpassed our pre-pandemic enrollment. Awesome. We were cheering in the office when we reached over the number from the 2017-2018 year. Last year, we served 18,115 students. We did so, and I want to give kudos to our teachers and programs for their extreme flexibility to continue to work with students while the workplace and the school life has continued to be disrupted in the last year. They have continued their tutoring and personal outreach, helping students find a schedule and a modality, whether it's online or in person, synchronous or asynchronous, that will continue to work for them. So our high retention rate is really due to the high level of flexibility and high touch that our programs are giving. Dr. Berry, I wanted to bring this to your attention. Our correctional education numbers have gone up, but we are not yet to pre-pandemic levels. Many facilities were still closed due to COVID outbreaks and to staffing shortages in the facilities. So we are looking for more growth there coming up. Our trend of our program types are back on trend. We lost a lot of our English language learners during the pandemic. They are back. They're back in big numbers, and Nicole Bennett can tell you about that. We are a minority serving institution. We serve over 60% English language learners in our programming. And just for today's presentation, I wanted to make a point that 33% of our foreign educated students have a college degree or professional credential. That's amazing, and that's higher than normal for us. And Virginia is almost always higher than the national average on this statistic. And I think in the last year, as you all know, the Afghan and Ukrainian asylees were heavy numbers in Virginia, and a lot of them were professionally trained. So that has really changed the face of our foreign-born population that we serve. It gives us an opportunity to work with folks who are highly literate in their home language. This trend is pretty much the same. That 25 to 44-year-old age group is our main group. Those are working age. Our trend of serving many more women than men is still true, but it did come back quite a bit. You can see, and probably the getting back into the correctional facilities helped the males come back into our program as well. We serve many more males in correctional facilities than females. This is another way to look at our population. You can see our dive, but also our kickback. Happy to see that. And just for the record, when taken together, adult education is a minority serving institution. Over 75% of our students indicate a race or ethnicity other than white. Even in the pandemic, we did great by serving working learners. Our students are not really coming to us for jobs necessarily. Many of them are already working when they come to us. They're looking to advance their skills. I'll show you some of our skill gains and how we measure success. But I'll start here at integrated education and training. And Cheryl mentioned this. This is that short-term intense programming that leads to an industry recognized credential. I told you we are at 18,000 students, so 1,800 IET students. We are on trend to be about 10% of our population served in an IET, working in the sectors shown here on the left. Lots of healthcare credentials earned, customer service and retail, transportation. I think truck driver training is one of our really top ones. Also, a lot of education is happening in our IETs. There were early childhood educators as well as paraprofessionals, which is what the K-12 schools need for teacher aid. So that is a growing area for us. In the coming year, we have 133 different cohorts planned for IET, hoping to serve a lot of students in those programs. Several of them are entrepreneurship, which is a great way to gather a group of students, create a cohort of students who do not all have the same sector in mind. So when you have a mixed group, perhaps in a rural area, and they don't all want to do certified nurse's aide or pharmacy tech or whatever, you can group them and do an entrepreneurship IET and help them on their way, working together, but working on their career in a different way than just straightforward credential earning. We are still, you've seen this for years, and we are still seeing higher percentage of students at the younger ages participating in IET. So that is still a good way to help our young disconnected youth get back on track. Our MSG is measurable skill gains. These are the gains that our students earn in the year in which they are served. So their academic, their language gains are, I'll start at the bottom here. Our negotiated performance was 27%, and you can see that we will be reporting 35, almost 36% measurable skill gain for last year, and that's fantastic. The dip is not so much that students weren't making gains, is that we don't know. We had a waiver, as did the whole country, from giving assessments in the pandemic. But we are really proud to see that our performance is way above expectations. Another trend that I think is worth talking about, this group has spoken about the low wages that we have seen in the early years of reporting to the committee. Our wages are way above expectations, and the trend line is really positive for our students. They are, this is probably a product of the rising minimum wage in Virginia, as well as the wage gains overall in the workforce in our country. But there we have a nice trend line of earnings after the students leave our program. Our GED completers are the capacity. I want you to see that the capacity is coming back up for test taking. We are still a GED only state. Our pass rate is above the national average, and the volume of testing has increased as well since the pandemic. So we're getting back on trend there. Happy to see that. I showed this to the board. I think it's really important. Title II is different than the other titles in WIOA. We are not all state employees. Those of us in the room today at the BDOE are state employees, but our programs are run by grant-funded workforce, and we are very much a part-time workforce, which has implications for how much and how fast we can push on innovations and initiatives. So it's just worth saying that we are a part-time workforce. And some things that we have invested in that I've told you about before. One thing that I want to land on is that just yesterday afternoon, we had our formal kickoff meeting for our new data system. This has been a long time in the works of procurement, and really happy to be able to use our leadership dollars to bring a data system to the field that will be much more user-friendly and provide data to the programs at their fingertips that's useful for programming decisions, you know, in the semester they're in, not waiting for aggregate data later. So that's a big investment. We're happy to get that rolling. We also are proud of our programs that took the initiative to raise their hand when we had some leadership dollars for family literacy. They got started last year. Many of them got started late in the year last year. It just was not a normal school year. But they are going on with their family literacy programs. Lynchburg is an additional program this year. Thanks to them for taking on this new programming model, which really works with the whole family on education, making education a focus. And we hope to see some family literacy perhaps getting started in far Southwest that has come onto the front burner just recently since I made this slide, which is fantastic. So here we are, but I just wanted to give you some updates. Another thing that I wanted to share is that the legislation that was passed to create the Workforce Development Agency, which you may be seeing in the newspaper, is really getting started now that we have a budget. That legislation did not include any movement for the adult education program, but the cabinet level secretaries are still talking about what's the best fit for adult education, and there is still conversation happening about whether the adult education program should be administered at the DOE or at BCCS. So legislation sessions coming up soon, and we will let you know how that plays out. We are, having more frank conversations this year than we were able to have last year, which was all happening during a competition. So that really complicated things, but the competition unfolded as it should have and was all awarded despite all the extra plates thrown at us. We were able to juggle and keep that going. So we have very strong programs awarded for 3 years, proud of them. Enrollment this fall is high, and we may have some mid-year updates for you in March. And I'll stop there and let folks ask questions if they have them of us here at DOE.
What is the date what is the date for March?
It's the 7th.
You said it's the 7th?
Yes, March 7th.
Thank you.
Our good friends at VALRC, the Virginia Adult Learning Resource Center, that have been our host for many years, are no longer in the same building. So we will, if we meet in person in March, be sure and check the agenda and the emails carefully, because we will not be, no matter what happens, we will not be meeting at the 3600 building. Alan, I'm reading your comment here. Are you saying it's strange that we have not mentioned it today, the G3 initiatives? I'm going to take that as a yes and just say that.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just strange, so many good programs, and it seems like at community college, there's so many things that they have to offer with adult education. It just seems like the word community college and G3 and all their initiatives never came up today.
Well, we do pair up with Fast Forward, which is funded training. The Fast Forward programs, when we can make an IET cooperatively with the Fast Forward programs, that's a real win-win-win. And when we support the truck driver training students, those are almost all supported through the Fast Forward program at the community college. So thank you for making sure we say that. And then the G3 initiatives, there are 5 pillars or pathways, lattices really, that are supported by G3. And those pathways appear again and again in our top sectors as we start folks out on their careers and get them that first credential. Our career coaches, adult career coaches, very much stay in tune with opportunities such as Fast Forward and G3 for their next credential. So thank you for bringing that out.
Thank you. No problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of state funding for credentials in Virginia. We're very fortunate.
I agree. I think there's a whole lot of things out there. It's just hard hooking up people with the right programs and the right money. And that takes a lot of, grassroots organization at 101 and coaching.
That's right. And we are now, one of our leadership initiatives that we have invested in over 2 fiscal years is adult career coaches. We support the training for cohorts of 2023 adult educators to become adult career coaches. And through our competition, ask that each of our regional programs have a career coach. So we are with you on that. It takes a lot of specialized know-how and resource know-how to connect adults to all the things that for which they are eligible. And make sure that they are applying and following the timelines and deadlines and understand which occupations are in demand now in their region, how to train for them. So our career coaches is one way that we are really trying to address all the issues that we've discussed today.
Thank you for your comments.
Are there any more questions for Heidi? I'll take that.
Thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi. So at this time, we have one more speaker, and that is Ms. Nicole Bennett. And I will let Dr. Williams go ahead and introduce her, if he would, please.
Our error, we didn't give Anthony another bio for Nicole. Nicole Bennett joins us as the Virginia Adult Association of Adult and Continuing Education base liaison. And she is also the regional program manager for Region 16, which is in the Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania area. So Nicole, thank you for joining us again to give us an update from the Practitioners Association.
Yes, good afternoon. I don't have the capacity to put my camera on or share screen, so I don't know if it's possible to at least share the screen. I was just going to show one quick thing, but I did want to give you guys some updates from VASE. So as we've mentioned in the past, VASE is the professional organization for adult educators in the state of Virginia. We are very involved with, you know, the legislation, advocacy, support of local programs, support of the administrators, support of the instructors, and things like that. And one of the initiatives of VASE is really to begin to really connect with the VDOE department as well as VALRIC, which for the things that we need in the state to support our instructors and our educators, which of course comes out and then provides the best resources and the best education services to our adults. So one of the things that we did want to mention that is currently on the radar of VASE, and we have been working with VDOE on under the adult ed program there, the OCTAE program, is the efforts that you guys heard about 2 meetings ago for the broadband initiatives coming around Virginia to provide better technology and Wi-Fi services and broadband to communities. And so VDOE under Heidi's and her department's direction put together a survey and some data about how the need for broadband across the state of Virginia affects our adult education services and our students. And so VASE came alongside and we provided some supporting data, some research to Heidi and her team. And we were able to, provide that resource that she was able to get that to the Office of Broadband. So VASE was very excited to be able to provide that service. So that's one of the things we just wanted to mention this time. And that's kind of a follow-up on, I think, 2 meetings ago when we had the Office of Broadband come out and talk to us on this meeting about what was going on with this new initiative for the Digital Equity Act. And then the other main thing that we have is this is the time of year where VASE has our yearly conference. And so we do have an online application. If somebody would be interested in doing that, oh yay, I can now share. Great, thank you. So this is our website, and I put this out there because this is something that is available to you to also sign up and to just attend. It is a virtual conference. We're still doing virtual, just due to some of the rising COVID numbers, concerns, as well as we're hoping that this allows people from all around Virginia to be able to attend. So this conference is open to educators, adult educators, and programs, but it's also open to businesses. It's open to community college members or advocates, individuals that are involved in the community college. It's open to CTE trainers throughout the state, because this is really something that we want to have people from a lot of different walks of life, a lot of different departments come together so that we can hear and network in order to make adult education the strongest it can be. So I just wanted to show you that we have a conference link on our website. See if it will work. And our conference this year there's our VACE Pathways Forward. And as you have heard Heidi talk a lot about, the pathways is wide open. What does that mean? It involves everything from education, it involves advancement, it involves opportunity, it involves the workplace, it involves family literacy. So we made this conference is really going to be about all of the different pathways that are in adult education, how we are serving adults, and how we're helping them to move down those different pathways. So we wanted to put this out there. The conference is October 23rd through 26th. They are daytime sessions. They are virtual. If you would love to, we'd love to have you join the conference if possible. You can click the link and it takes you to an online registration. And again, I just wanted to put that out there that it is open. It is also open to corrections, Dr. Berry. So if you want to share that with your departments as well. Last year we had a large showing come from corrections, and we hope to have some of those individuals come back. And again, this is really something that we love to hear from the community about at these conferences, but also it kind of gives you more information on what adult education is doing throughout the state and how we are professionally training our educators and our instructors and our programs. So that's pretty much it from VACE. Any questions on anything for that? Okay. And I would just speak to, Heidi had some great data and some great information on her slides. And just to kind of touch, I know Dr. Rissler's still on here. Our IETs, which are those credential training programs through that the adult education holds throughout the state, one of our benefits to those is that we can really find some of our ELA, ELL students who have those degrees from other countries, who maybe have those backgrounds. We can get them into either a similar field training, or we can get them into maybe even the same field through those IET credential trainings while they are still working on their English language skills. So I would just kind of head a little tidbit to our IET credential training programs are working on the trade knowledge as well as the language skills and or literacy. So if it's a matter of improving their literacy and numeracy skills, those IET programs are a great resource. And that's one way adult ed is continuing to grow. Having been in it over 20 years, I've seen that growth in adult ed to really try to help with the workplace trainings relevant to our refugees coming in with those backgrounds. So just wanted to add that to Heidi's little tidbit there.
Thank you, Nicole. At this time, if there's no questions, we can go ahead and do a quick meeting recap and talk a little bit about Heidi. You had forthcoming nominations.
The nominations are still in process. The nomination process is still in process in the department. As you know, the department has had a lot of change at the leadership level. So when we have a nomination process open, we will certainly lean on all of our current members to help us identify and invite great new colleagues to our Adult Education and Literacy Advisory Committee.
Yeah, and none of our members currently are ready for going off or being renewed, correct?
Everyone is solid until June 30. We hopefully we can get some more members before some of your second terms are over.
Okay. Well, I think we had an excellent meeting today. We heard from 3 speakers, and the information that Dr. Lieber and Dr. Rissler gave was, sharing the barriers of immigration in Virginia and the challenges that pose to adult education and the workforce development for immigrants. And then coming right into that, Dr. Ayers, her presentation overall for adult education with the intra and entrepreneurial mindset and how it works with innovation in the new gig economy that we're seeing today. I think that married really well together. And I really want to thank Nicole for coming back and giving us a quick update on that broadband and talking a little bit about adult education and VAACE. And Heidi, obviously, great to hear the information, and it seems like our numbers are increasing for the most part in all areas. Do you have anything else that you would like to add, Heidi, before I adjourn the meeting?
No,
Anybody
I
else?
do not. Let me turn it over to Dr. Williams.
I
Okay.
just want to thank all of our presenters this morning. Thank you for sharing such valuable information. We learned a lot and appreciate all of the work that you all do daily to support our learners. No other comments from me at this time, but I definitely want to say thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. So I'm going to go ahead, and it is 12:12 and call the meeting to a close. Thank you, everyone, for coming and participating.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.